This time around, we take a look at the top 5 brand new features that you definitely need to know in Microsoft 365. So stay tuned, you're going to learn something cool here. Greetings, my fellow YouTubers. Andy here, Microsoft MVP. So nice to see you. I really appreciate you stopping by. It really does mean a lot to me. This week, I've taken a look at all the new features that are coming out in Microsoft 365. Some of them are in preview. Some of them are so cool. And of course, there's so many of them. What I've decided to do is put together a list of what I think are the top 5 kind of new features that you really do need to know. So stick around, because in this session, I'm going to do demos of each of these. Now, just before we start, I got a shout out to my very good friend, Alex de Jong, who's a fellow MCT. He's launched his own YouTube channel, and he's specializing in Microsoft Azure and also Endpoint Manager. So just take a quick look up there, check out his channel, and I would really appreciate it if you would show him some love, okay? Because we like to be shown love around here, don't we? Comments, questions about this and any of my other sessions, please go ahead, pop them down below, and I'll do my very best to answer those questions for you. And as always, if you've not subscribed to the channel, then I would really appreciate you clicking up there on that subscribe button, ringing that bell so that you don't miss out on any new postings or new videos. And there we go. Okay, so I think without any more jibber jabber, I think it's about time we get to the demos. So I'm going to kick off the first of my demos here in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Now, over the past few months, we've seen more and more cool features being released, and I just want to show you just a few in the Admin Center just to get started. So I'm going to come down to Active Teams and Groups. Of course, this used to be Groups, but do remember that Teams are just an extension of Groups. So what I want to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new group here. And I'm going to call this group, it's a Microsoft 365 group. So I'm going to call this my Aberdeen office. Okay. I'm going to click on next. And do you want to assign an owner? So in this case, I'm going to assign the mod administrator, who is she's doing a wonderful job. So I'm going to assign her. I'm going to click on next, and I'm going to go ahead and add in some members to this group. So I'm going to add Adele, Alex, Alan. I'm going to bring in Brian, Cameron, and Christy. So they are the members of this group. Now, if I click on next, I'm going to call this my Aberdeen HQ, and you can see you can change the email address, by the way. If you don't like it, you can go back in any time. And of course, because it's a Microsoft 365 group, is it public or private? So for the purpose of this demo, I want it to be discoverable. It's going to be public. However, I do not want to create a team at this point. So I'm going to take that checkbox out, and I'm going to go ahead and configure this. Now, where does this change? So I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to refresh this page, and in the groups pane here, well, first of all, you'll see that the Aberdeen office is not a Microsoft team at the moment. So some of the changes that are new, first of all, you'll notice here that this pane of glass, or this pane here, it seems a lot bigger than it used to be. And check it out. Would you like to add Microsoft Teams to this group? Now, this feature used to be in the Settings tab. So they've really gone in and they've cleaned things up a little bit. Now, if you want to extend the 365 group to become a team, you can do so. However, it's an irreversible action. So once you do that, you can't go back. All right? So that's the first thing that's new here. All right. Now, the next thing that's kind of cool is they've played around with all the settings. So rather than being on the multiple sheet tabs, everything is now just in one single place. So do you want people outside the organization to be able to email the team? Do you want to send copies to members and so on? But check it out. We've now got external file sharing right here in the tab, the Teams tab. So rather than having to go into SharePoint, the SharePoint Admin Center, or go into the settings, you can set this perfect. So I can say, yeah, okay, I want to do this on a team-by-team basis. Check it out. We can also, if you've got sensitivity labels, so confidential, classified, those labels would appear here, and you can go ahead and assign that here as well. What about team conversations? So this is the Teams integration here. Allow members to edit their sent messages, allow members to delete sent messages. So you might not want that, for example. And at any point, I can go ahead and I can delete that team if I want to. I'm going to go ahead and click on Save. So again, very, very cool that they've really thought about that and they've got this now in just one place. Okay. Now, another thing that's kind of cool is I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to go into Setup. And you've probably not been into Setup for some time, but we've now got a number of new options here. Again, these were buried in various other places. And again, in the Setup area here, everything is just so much easier to find. And it tells you what you've finished, what you've started, what you've not done. But in terms of migration, if you want to migrate content across, let's say from Dropbox or file shares on your network, you can deploy an agent. And once that agent is active, you can then download your content. If you've got a SharePoint server. So again, we've got very, very simple wizard-based assistance to help you migrate that content in. Very, very cool. So for my number 4 cool new feature, I'm going to kick off here in Azure Active Directory. And to be honest, there are loads of new features here, but this is one of my favorite ones. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to come into the Security Blade. Now, over the past few weeks, I've been speaking at length about the benefits of multi-factor authentication. And I've mentioned that I can go in and I can go into authentication methods. And this is basically where you can set up things like passwordless authentication, where you want to invite your users to use the Microsoft Authenticator. You can even sign up for things like text messaging and so on. However, getting users configured can be a little bit of a challenge. Now it's no more. Now we have something called a registration campaign. And the registration campaign can allow you as an administrator to kind of give your users a little nudge, if you will. So I can go in here and I can say, okay, do you want this to be Microsoft managed? And if it is Microsoft managed, basically Microsoft can engage with your users, and that's fine if you're a small business, and you can go to there's a learn page there that will take you more. What you might want to do is you might want to enable this, okay, and you'll say, okay, how many days are the users allowed to snooze the request? So for example, I might say 7 days. So the next time the user logs in, they'll get nudged and so on. All right. So I can then say, do you want to exclude any users and groups? Now, again, you may want to exclude the break glass administrator account here. Remember, you should always have at least one admin without MFA, just in case something goes horribly wrong. I can't believe I'm telling you that, but actually, that is official Microsoft recommendations. Personally, I think it's crazy, but there we go. So multi-factor authentication, what I want to do is I just want to select specific users and groups. So what I've got here is I just created a set of users, of course, in my Aberdeen office. So I want to remind my Aberdeen office that I want them to go in and get signed up here. All right. So I'm going to add in that user. Okay, let's add in that select. Now you'll notice at the interface, sometimes it can be a little bit slow as well. And you can set up various filters here if you want to. So I've gone ahead, I've set that up now. So my users will now start a registration campaign in order to get signed up for multi-factor authentication. Isn't that cool? For my number 3 option, I'm coming here into Azure Active Directory, and I'll be honest, this is one of my absolute favorites. So I'm going to come down here into External Identities, and we have a new feature here called Cross-Tenant Access Settings. Now, just before I show you this, what you will need to hear is obviously the tenant name or the tenant ID that you want to share with. I've got my tenant ID here. Now I've got a couple of tenants open here, and I've gone ahead and I've copied the tenant ID. You can also do it by name as well. So you can search by a particular name. So what I'm going to do now is I'm coming back into external identities. And of course, it's all about collaboration. So, you know, it's great having a Microsoft 365 tenant, but we need to collaborate. We need to work with other users and so on. So this is why this particular piece of software really excites me. So I'm going to come here to my cross-tenant access settings, and I'm going to add in an organization that I'd like to collaborate with. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to paste this ID. You can see it's detected the organization, and I'm now going to click on add. So I've gone ahead and I've now created that link, and of course I can add in more as well if I want to. Now, one thing you'll notice is you've got inbound and outbound access rules. So this is kind of cool. I can say, okay, how do you want to manage this? So what I can do is I can go into the default settings. Now you'll notice it's inherited from those default settings here. And what this means is you can set up all your permissions, what exactly from the tenant level, your permissions, what you want to allow outbound, and also what you want to allow inbound. So I can go ahead and edit these inbound permissions. So am I going to allow external users and groups inbound? Am I going to allow access? Does it apply to all external users and groups, or only selected users and groups from that user's database? So I can now do a search of users or groups in that organization. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to say all. And the other thing that you can also do is you can say only these applications inbound. So again, you can select specific applications that your partner may want to share with you and so on. So this is such a really nice feature. Now, of course, you can set up the trust settings between the two parties. So trust multi-factor MFA. So between the two tenants, you can say it won't prompt you for MFA. So if you were a group of companies, let's say, so company 1 and company 2, but part of the same group, then you can trust multi-factor authentication between the tenants. Trust compliant devices, trust hybrid Azure AD join devices. So if you're doing things like conditional access, if you're doing kind of remote management or deployment, this is a real win-win situation. So again, you can do that for external, and again, I can also configure my outbound settings. So likewise, am I going to allow my users out? Am I going to allow my users to use those external applications? And this is very much B2B, business to business. Absolutely brilliant tool. Check out cross-tenant access settings. It's definitely one of my favorites. For my number 2 option, I'm going to have a look at administrative units. Now this, although it's been in Azure Active Directory for some time, it's now made its way into Microsoft 365. So I'm going to come down here to users and have a look at active users. And I want to mention a problem that we have. So if I go into Alex's account here, and I'm going to scroll down, and one of the things that you can do is you can assign Alex an administrator role. Now by default, most users don't have any admin privileges, but the problem is with assigning and managing roles here, you give them access to the entire directory, so every user. What if I just wanted Alex to be able to manage a group of users? Well, until now, you couldn't really do that, but now we can. So I'm going to go into roles, and we now have something called administrative units. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create an administrative unit for my Aberdeen office. Okay, so here is an admin office, and I'm going to just create that. Now, I can go ahead and I can either upload the users via a CSV file, or I can manually add in now 20 users. Don't worry though, you can add in more later, but you can bring in up to 200 users via a sample file. So just download the sample. It contains the headers that you need, and you'll see just a list of users. It's really simple. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add some users, and this means, what are the users who are in Aberdeen? So which of my users are going to be in Aberdeen? So I'm going to go in here, going to bring in Adele, Alex, and Alan. I'm going to scroll down and bring in Bianca, Brian, and Cameron. I'm going to click on add and add those in. Now, if I click next, it then says, okay, what roles do you want to assign here? Well, for example, you might have an exchange, you might need an exchange admin or a user admin. Well, a user admin is the second most powerful role in 365. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and it tells you exactly what the user can do here. But I don't want the user to be a user admin for the entire organization, just for Aberdeen. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select one of my users. And in this case, I'm going to say, Alex is pretty knowledgeable. I would like him to be the administrator here. Now, it also tells you the last time the user signed in as well. And again, if you want to assign any additional permissions, it shows you what permissions Alex has got. So there we go. I have now assigned Alex in that role. Now, once I've done that, I'm now going to click next. And again, I can add in more users if I want to, and I'll click on add, and it's now created the administrative unit, or AU, and I'll click on done. I would just like to point out this is not an organizational unit, so you cannot apply settings. What we're really looking for here is units divide your organization's administrative responsibilities into units, into manageable units. Now, if I click back into here, you can now see that I can add more users. I can add some groups as well. And remember, groups are teams, teams are groups. So I could bring in a couple of groups or teams here that I would like the user to manage. All right. And as well as, adding users and groups, I can upload and I can export members out and so on. Again, I've got the cheat tab here, and again, it shows me I can easily go back in and add in additional roles if I want to. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen, that is administrative units which are now part of Microsoft 365. So for my number one, I'm going to look at entitlement management. And I know some of you might say, Andy, that's not new. But actually, it absolutely rocks. And it amazes me how many people don't use this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into, first of all, I'm going to come into identity governance. And in here, one of the things that we want to do is you've got this thing called entitlement management. Now, just to say that you can add in connected organizations. So, any partner organizations that I showed you earlier, for example, you can bring them in as well as guests. All right, now I'm going to go in, and you can either do this in one of two ways. You can create an access package, which will then ask you to create a catalog, or you can create a catalog and then an access package. So it doesn't really matter which way you do it. Now, what does entitlement management mean? Well, entitlement management allows you to package a set of resources and make them available either to your internal users or to external guests and connected organizations. So, for example, you might be partnering with a company on a project or something like that. It's absolutely awesome. So one of the first things that we do is we create a catalog of resources. So I'm going to call this my Aberdeen project. Okay, so I'm going to call this my Aberdeen project, and I'm going to call this my sales team resources. Okay. Am I going to enable it? And do you want to allow for external users to access these resources? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say yes. Now, you'll notice that by default, you get a general catalog. Just to say that you can't delete that, you can only have, you can't delete it. You can add additional catalogs, but there must be always at least one catalog. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and open up that catalog. I'm going to edit the catalog. And again, you can make those same changes here that we looked at earlier. And it shows you here that at the moment, we don't have any resources in the catalog. So what we want to do is we want to add in some resources. So I'm going to click into Add Resources. And you can see this is so cool. You can add in groups and teams, applications, and SharePoint websites. So I'm going to go ahead and say groups and teams. So for my Aberdeen office, I might add in some other, we might have a number of different teams that we work with. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in the 3 of them. All right. Now, I can now add in some applications. So I might bring in Box. I might bring in, let's say, LinkedIn. I might bring in Salesforce. I might bring in Zoom. So I'm bringing in a set of applications. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm creating a catalog of resources. I might bring in some SharePoint sites. So I can say, Aberdeen. So I can say, my Aberdeen office. I can bring that in. What else have we got? I can scroll down here. I can bring in Tromsø, Trondheim. I can bring in US sales. So these are various websites that I can bring in. So I'm creating a catalog of resources that I'm happy to share. So I'm going to click on add, and I've now added those resources in. Okay, so now that I've added the resources, now we can create an access package. Now, as I said, you can either create an access package from within the catalog that you're in, or if I go back to the entitlement management, I can create an access package. I'll do a new package, and I'll call this my Aberdeen project. Okay, and again, it now says which catalog. So now I can choose the Aberdeen project. See? So I'm going to say, okay, let's click on resources, and I can now select resources from the catalog that I've just created. So I'm going to do Aberdeen, and I'm going to do Tromsø, and I'm going to click next. And in here, it says, okay, do you want to select a role that you want these users to have? Again, in this case, I'm going to select a member or an owner for the, let's say for this particular one. All right. I can now add some applications in. So I'll bring in LinkedIn for this. I'll bring in Zoom. I'll bring in Salesforce. Okay, and likewise, depending on the application, it will ask you which role that you want to bring in. So again, I'm just going to choose some default options here. All right. Now I can bring in some SharePoint sites. So I'm just going to bring in the Aberdeen and the Trondheim personnel sites here. And again, you can select the role, but I just want my users to have visitor rights for these websites. Of course, you could bring them in as members if you want to. So there we go. I created a catalog of resources. I've now created an access package, and now I can say, okay, how can we, who is this for? So you can create an access package for users in your directory, so your users, for users not in your directory, and also for none. So for example, any that the administrator would want to bring in. All right. So for example, I could say for users not in my directory, and you can see it's specifically connected organizations. So if we've got partner organizations that you can add them in as well. Also, you can bring in all users, so all connected organizations and any new and external users. So for example, this could be guests. Do they require approval, yes or no? And does the requester, so if I'm requesting access, do I need to put in a justification? Again, yes or no. How many stages? So again, yes or no. So I could say yes or no. And who's the first approver? Is it the internal sponsor or the external sponsor? So in this case, I could say it's the internal sponsor, and I could add a failback here if I wanted to. So for example, I can bring in a user who can then obviously respond quickly. All right. The decision must be made in how many days? So I could say, 3 days, 14 days seems a little extreme. Does the approver require justification? No. Are you ready to enable new requests? Yes, I am. Okay. And then we say, okay, you can add in, let's say, requester information. And you can ask the question. So, why do you require access? Okay. So you can ask a question, and you can say, I want long text. And is it required or not? In this case, it's not required. Okay. And I'll just click on the life cycle. So are you going to expire this package after a certain number of days? And you can see here that the default is a year. Number of hours, so again, it might just be a short-term access, or are you never going to expire it? You can also do it on a particular date. You know, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to give you access for 6 months here. You can also mix this with access reviews. So if this was kind of never, you might want to do regular reviews. So do they still need access, and so on. For the purpose of this demo, I'll say no. Now we go to the rules, and you can add in custom rules here. So you can add in additional information. Again, for the purpose of this, I'm just going to bypass this. All right, so there we go. We now get the summary. We get the resources and the roles that they're going to have access to, the requests, the approver information, the requester information, and the life cycle. And now I go off and I create the package. Now, if you get this message, typically it's because you have made an error. And if I scroll up here, you can see I've forgotten to put in a description. So I can go in here and I can just say this is a test package. Okay. So again, if you get error messages, it's typically because of that. So again, I can jump forward, click on create, and you can now see I've gone ahead and created my first access package. And that is entitlement management. So there you have it, my top 5 features which are part of Microsoft 365 and Azure. I really hope you enjoyed it and that you got a lot out of that. And of course, if you did, I would really appreciate you supporting my channel by hitting that like button. It really does make a difference. And if you've not subscribed, go ahead, click on that subscribe button, ring the bell, and you won't miss out on future postings. You know, somebody said to me the other day, Andy, there's so much stuff on your site, and it's true. You could actually go through a full certification with all of my videos, and I think it's 154 videos now. Listen, I really appreciate you dropping in. Thanks so much for your support, and I will see you next week. You stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.